Good evening and welcome to Death Creations, our virtual education series about end-of-life issues. I'm Alan Baruther, board member of Roots and Roads Community Hospice Foundation in Tucson, Arizona, formerly known as Casa de la Luz Foundation. For those who do not know us, our vision is to transform end-of-life experience into the final act of living well. One way we do this is through end-of-life education for our community. Other ways we accomplish our goals is to provide assistance to patients and families in their time of greatest need. This is a chart of what we did in the calendar year 2020. This slide shows some of the things we were involved with, including housing assistance, transportation, and final arrangements. We also have special programs for veterans and their families. Our system of referral for help works quickly to address the immediate needs of those requiring assistance in our communities we serve. To learn more about the foundation, Megan is going to drop a link to our website in the chat room tonight. An easy way to remember it is one word, rootsandroads.org. Tonight we have as speaker Emily Nelson from Be a Tree Cremation Company in Denver, Colorado. She will share information about aquamation with us. Thank you, Emily, for sharing your time and wisdom with us. We're so excited to have each of you here to learn. Now I'd like to introduce the moderator, Director of Community Engagement, who will present Emily, David Fife.
Thanks so much, Alan. We are very pleased to have Emily with us tonight and also to have all of our amazing participants. It's your insights and questions and perspectives that have really given life to this series throughout this year. It is out of your questions and desires to learn more about this topic tonight is why we brought Emily here. So we look forward to more of your ideas. And as Alan said, it also makes such a difference. If you are benefiting from this series, and if you are able, we would greatly appreciate any donations that you could offer so that we can continue providing this level of education and then also support hospice patients and their families. As Megan mentioned earlier, we encourage you to putting questions for Emily in the Q&A box that you find at the bottom of your screen. So you just click on that box, type in your questions, and you can just do that as Emily is presenting. And then when she is done, we'll get to as many as possible. And now we want to warmly welcome Emily Nelson. Emily is the founder and CEO of Be a Tree Cremation. As you can imagine, Emily's path to this point has taken many turns. She spent a few years working in the death care industry and always, she said, had an inkling that there was a different way for us to return to the earth when we die. After several conversations with family and community members, her own research, she discovered that water cremation or alkaline hydrolysis was a wonderful option that brings comfort and peace to individuals, as well as it treads more lightly on the earth. So Emily, thank you so much for being with us tonight and for talking with us, educating us about water cremation. We'll turn things over to you now.
Thank you so much, David, and thank you, Alan. It's such a pleasure and an honor to be here with you all tonight, wherever you're from. I'm from Denver, Colorado, and I know many of you are likely dialing in from Arizona today. So I'm really delighted to be able to share this information with you. As we're kind of transitioning seasons, I just want to point out these flowers sitting next to me were actually nourished by the liquid remaining from our water cremation process from the farm that we partner with. So really special to have those with me now because we've since had a freeze and they're no longer blooming. So With that being said, I'm going to go ahead and start my presentation and share with you some surprising details about water cremation, and welcome you to ask any questions that come up as I'm sharing. So Beatrix Cremation, we're located here in Denver, Colorado. We opened our doors in 2021, so just January of this year. Spent kind of the pandemic going through the process of getting everything set up, and so thankful to be finally open and serving the community. Really, our two goals at Beatrix are to help people live on through nature after they die, and to reduce the carbon footprint associated with the funeral industry, which isn't insignificant. A standard fire cremation emits about as much CO2 as a 600-mile car trip. So it, has a pretty big impact on our environment. So I'm going to walk through today with you kind of all about our process and what that looks like. And I just want to lead with the fact that if you're here, you're not alone. I'm assuming everyone here is interested in greener funeral options, and that's a majority of Americans. So, that's one of the reasons I really got into this space, is because the kind of larger industry wasn't meeting the needs of the people who want to be more environmentally friendly. So let's talk about what water cremation is. The scientific name for it is alkaline hydrolysis. It's going to use mostly water, so 95% water, and then about 5% alkali, or lye. It's found in soaps and many other common household goods. We use potassium hydroxide at our facility, so it comes in big bags like a dry white flake, and we're going to add that to the process to help activate the water molecule. So that alkali combined with the water and the heat are going to together mimic the natural decomposition process in just a very accelerated way and a more controlled way. And again, I talked about the footprint of a fire cremation. Well, compared to flame, this is going to use 90% less energy, and we don't have any emissions coming from our building. So you won't see a smokestack. With a fire cremation, you can have things like the fumes from the mercury dental fillings and other toxic chemicals are just going into the air. So that doesn't happen with our process at all. Here's a picture of what the machine looks like. One of my goals is to just kind of demystify what it is. I think some people have different images in their head of what this might be, and it kind of just looks really like modern and scientific. Different machines may look slightly different, but overall it's a very approachable looking, and this is all done under one roof at our facility in Denver. So we meet with families and do the process all together, which for me was important because, at a lot of funeral homes, we have, you're making arrangements and meeting in one place, and your loved one may be cared for in an entirely different location without you even being aware of that. So let's get into some surprising facts about it. So the first surprising fact about water cremation is that you still get what you would know as ashes or cremated remains back in an urn. So the end of the water cremation process, there's two things left. The first thing is the liquid, and then the second thing is the skeletal remains. So the skeletal remains are then be able to dry and be processed and placed into an urn. So families can still memorialize in whatever way they choose. We still have a lot of families that go scatter in nature. We have families that may have a cemetery plot that they can still use. And so that doesn't, choosing water cremation doesn't eliminate any of those options. We also have a specially designed urn, hence the name Be a Tree, that you can use to plant a memorial tree. So it's a biodegradable container that goes into the ground and contains the cremated remains or the ashes, and that can be used to plant a sapling tree. This is what that kind of system looks like. It's actually made by a company also based in Colorado called The Living Urn. You can buy these for your pets as well. They're available on their website as well as through us. So really great option for families that want something a little different. The second surprising thing that I wanted to share is that medical devices don't need to be removed for this process. So, with a regular cremation, say that you had a pacemaker, that would have to come out before you could be cremated because it could explode inside of their equipment. So because there's no risk of that happening here, those don't have to be removed. Pacemakers, artificial joints, dental fillings, those are all left at the end of our process and can be safely recycled. The next thing to share is that it's actually really old. This was invented in 1888. So most people are really surprised to hear that. There was a man named Amos Herbert Hobson, and he found a way to do this because he had a bunch of diseased cattle, and burning diseased cattle in a field, it isn't the healthiest thing to do. So he was able to find that this was a way that they could dispose of those diseased animals in a safer way and return the remaining liquid back to the land in a safe manner. It's only been used though in humans for probably around 20 years now. It started in more of a medical setting. So places like UCLA, the Mayo Clinic, the University of Florida, they're all using this technology for their body donation programs. So they found that it was a really clean and safe way for them to dispose of the cadavers after they were done with them. And it could be right in the same facility as the rest of the hospital. It didn't have to be at an offsite crematory because it didn't have all the smoke. The next thing to share is that for us, the remaining liquid is actually returned back to the earth. So as I was alluding to earlier with these flowers next to me, we are using the liquid byproduct as a way to fertilize and nourish the ground. So we have a partner that we worked with called Half Moon Farm. They're in Lakewood, Colorado, about 15 minutes down the street from where we are. And so we actually haul this over to their farm, and it's applied to the land there on strictly non-edible items. So mostly fresh cut flowers, also grass and trees as well. So that's just a really special way. It is, I just want to say this, it is considered safe to put down the wastewater treatment systems. We just happen to do that a little bit differently. But many other providers across the country are putting this into wastewater treatment and, with approval from their local municipalities. So that's another way it can be done as well. So here's a picture of the farm. It gets just so vibrant in the summertime. This is probably closer to, I think this was last fall, right before the first freeze. And then here's some blooms from the summer. So it's absolutely gorgeous. And it's really special for us to invite families back there to share the space and really see the area that their loved one contributed to. So the final surprising thing that I'm going to share is about the cost. So it is comparable to traditional cremation and definitely significantly less than what you would pay for a traditional burial. So these are some statistics from the National Funeral Directors Association. So average cost of a burial in Colorado is almost $7,000 in 2019. And a cremation was also about $4,500, although I will say that you can get cheaper cremations. Our packages, though, are going to start at just over $2,000, $2,250, and that'll include transportation, a death certificate, a basic urn, and kind of all of our services under that. So I really cared about making this accessible. I don't think that making a greener choice should have to be something that's cost prohibitive. So it was important to me that this was an approachable price point. So that kind of leads me to the end of our presentation today. If you are in Colorado, we are starting to do pre-arrangements. So we're always happy to sit down and meet and document your wishes and pay in advance if that's something that you want to do to kind of help protect your family and lock in today's prices. And we're always just here to talk and have conversations that may be hard to have with your own family and answer any questions. So I will go ahead and turn it back over and see if there's any other questions that have come up.
Thanks so much, Emily. So maybe we could just begin by having you talk a little bit more about your experience of, you came out of, or you started during the pandemic, it sounds like, but you have been involved in this industry for quite some time. How have you noticed people have changed in terms of their desire to talk about death and dying, their desire or questions that they might have about final arrangements? Has that changed much in your experience?
You know, I have sensed a shift, certainly since the pandemic began. I mean, I still believe, it's taboo to some extent. However, I think the pandemic has caused us to all consider our own mortality in a much more real way, having to see the impacts that this had on even, people of all ages. And so there has been a shift, and I've definitely found that a lot of people may not want to bring up the topic of their death and kind of what they would want to do with their body, and even just all the topics that surround death and dying. However, once it's brought up, it's actually something that seems like a relief for a lot of people to be able to talk about in a safe space.
Great, thanks. One of the questions that has come up is people want to know how long this process of water cremation takes. How long does it take for the body to break down?
It will vary. Our specific technology, the system that we have, is a lower temperature, and it takes about 18 hours start to finish. So, a lot longer than a fire cremation would take. And there are higher temperature systems that take closer to 4 to 6 hours. So it definitely depends on the technology. Is again, slightly longer than flame cremation, but still doesn't impact, the family's ability to memorialize and kind of complete all of those parts of their grieving process and rituals.
Do you mind describing a little bit more in detail what that process is, what goes into it, and more specifically about what is the temperature that's needed, how much energy is used, those types of things?
Sure. Yeah. So we have, again, our lower temperature machine. And so it only gets up about to 199 degrees maximum. And the reason for that is that some vessels are pressurized so they can go above the boiling point. Ours is not pressurized. So it uses a less amount of energy because it isn't going up to that higher temperature. And that's why it can take a little bit longer. So following that process as well, when the skeletal remains come out, and then they do have to be dried. So they're wet when they come out. And so they kind of are just gently laid out on trays so that they can dry over about 24 hours. Some folks will maybe use some sort of heating element to accelerate the drying process, but we just kind of let the dry Colorado air do that for us. And then they're processed in the same way that any cremated remains would be at a flame crematory, which I think most people probably don't know that even fire cremation remains are mostly composed of bones. And so they do have to be kind of ground up before they can be placed into the urn.
And I don't know if you answered this, I'm sorry. We live in the desert here in Tucson, and so water is one of our treasured resources. How much water does it take in order for water cremation for a person?
Yeah, really good question. Water use is definitely something that we all need to be mindful of as we're continuing to move into a place where our climate's changing and water is becoming more scarce. However, I think it's less than a household would use in a day. We use about 150 gallons in a process. And we're always optimizing that to minimize water usage. But our water bill is at Beatree is comparable to what we pay at home. So that kind of tells you a little bit about what our water usage is like.
Thank you. And can families, loved ones have access to any of the water that's been used in the process?
They can, yes. We offer every family the chance to take some of that liquid with them. We call it tree tea. We're actually registered in the state of Colorado as a fertilizer producer, although we're not necessarily producing it, but just to make sure that everyone knows what it is and where it's going. So we do let them have kind of little bottles, about 16-ounce bottles, as many as they want, though. They can really take as much as they want to. And then we'll give instructions of how they can dilute that with water and use it in their own gardens or on their plants at home. So that really gives another way to memorialize and kind of add some kind of ritual to their grieving process in addition to having the urn.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you. And it sounds like if someone here in Arizona wanted to take advantage of your services, that's possible. Could you talk a little bit about what people need to do if that's a desire on their part?
Yeah, definitely. And that's going to lead into an even larger topic, which is how we can get it legalized in the state of Arizona. However, if today someone in Arizona did want to use our services, what would need to happen is that you would still call a local funeral home who would work with us to essentially ship the remains to Colorado. So they'd be a lot of times they're going on a plane and may need to be either embalmed or at least, on dry ice, depending on the policies that exist in Arizona. I'm not completely familiar with your transport policies. So it's definitely possible. It's something that would come with some fees from that funeral home and is definitely something that can happen.
So since you brought it up, why don't we talk a little bit about the fact that it's not legal here in Arizona and what that might look like if people wanted to work towards legalizing water cremation here in Arizona?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the very first step is just to make it known that you want this as a choice. So call your local representatives, your state representatives, and tell them that you want to legalize alkaline hydrolysis as a approved form of disposition. That can be someone in your state needs to sponsor a bill that would propose this. And in the state of Colorado, what we did is we actually just expanded the definition of cremation. So rather than just having it be about fire and heat, it was about any way of reducing a body down to its essential elements. So that allowed alkaline hydrolysis to come in and be considered as a different form of cremation. Other states have actually legislated it as its own unique disposition method. So that's another way to go about it as well. But really on the simplest level, it's just about really using your voice and letting your representatives know that that's something that you want.
And what was the response from local funeral homes in Denver when you started this process and advocating for it? Was that a collaborative experience that you had where funeral homes and mortuaries open to this? It seems like this would be an option that they may embrace as well, because it would be something that maybe in the future that they could also offer folks in their community.
Yeah, I think that they are going to come around. It's an industry that's a little bit slow to adopt new things and to change and grow. So I actually think that the public is a lot more ready for this than the funeral homes are. However, overall, it's been well received, I would say, with a lot of curiosity. I've brought a lot of more traditional funeral directors and funeral home owners through our facility, and I think that they've all been really surprised by how clean and kind of technology oriented this process is. And I do believe that they will come around. And in fact, there are some other funeral homes investing in the technology in the state now. So I think it's a great trend and really great to see.
Yeah, I think that's really the case, as you mentioned, all over the country, is that people are looking for alternatives and they want to just know what the options are. And we learn about different types of final arrangements all over the world, and things that we had never been exposed to before. And so it's wonderful that we can have these kind of dialogues. And I imagine that that this will become more desired as we move down the road a little bit. Somebody asked you that you had mentioned that the Mayo Clinic has used this technology. Does that include the Phoenix Mayo Clinic, do you know, here in Arizona?
I don't think so, although I'm not 100% sure.
Okay, great. So since we all love honesty, what were the problems and issues or bad experiences that you've had on this journey into water cremation?
Let's see. Great question. One of the hurdles that we had was getting all the permits that were required. So as I stated before, we were trying to get up and running during the pandemic when everyone was suddenly working from home, including all the people who work for the city and state permitting offices. So trying to communicate to them what it was that we were doing and what kind of permits that we would need was very interesting. And it really took them, folks being curious and learning more about what we were doing. So one of the things that happened is that we were able to, instead of being zoned as a crematory, we were actually zoned as a funeral home because we don't have any elevated risk of fire or emissions. So that was something that was a really big victory because we got to, be in the location that we wanted to be in because of that. What else? Another challenge. So the city of Denver is, the Denver kind of the district that handles wastewater here actually does not allow the discharge of alkaline hydrolysis into the system. So that was one of the many reasons that we decided to apply it to the land instead. So I'm actually really grateful for that because it opened up a really new way to do this. And I think a way that definitely resonates more with me. And I think more with the public, the fact that it's going back to the land and feeding new life. So that challenge actually ended up being kind of a cool benefit and something that's really unique about what we do.
Thank you. I love honesty. And you mentioned that mortuaries as an institution, the funeral industry has been a little slow in coming to this. I've been part of the church for my entire career, and that's an institution that moves very, very slowly. So I'm used to that kind of process, that it takes a while to move communities into new ways of thinking. But one of the questions that folks had was, what's been the reaction of religious leaders in Colorado and Denver to this process? Has there been any?
I would say very little. I haven't had a big vocal reaction really either way. Certainly some of the chaplains and people in hospice have been very positive about this. I will say that I know on more of a national scale, the Catholic leaders have not been supportive of this. They didn't find it to be a dignified way for people to go. But as if you're Catholic, you probably know that they also felt the same way about flame cremation and were very reluctant to kind of say that that was a sanctioned way to go. I think they still definitely prefer more traditional burial. However, we have served many families who are Catholic and, have a rosary and a mass, and then with a viewing at their church, and then use our process afterwards. So again, it's kind of an evidence that the public and, maybe the followers of a religion may be more inclined to change and try new things than the leadership of the church.
Thanks. How long did it take when you started advocating for that expanded definition of cremation in Colorado so that water cremation was then legal? Was that a multi-year process? What are we talking about here?
Oh my goodness, I can't take any credit for that. I'm standing on the shoulders of people who came before me. This has been legal in our state since 2011. So far before we opened, it's been legal for almost a decade before anyone actually took action. There's one other provider that started doing this for humans before we did, maybe a year ahead of us. So again, from 2011 to about 2019, even though it was legalized, no one was doing it. So I can't really take any credit, and I don't know how long it took exactly. But I can speak to, the process of legalizing something that you may have heard about, human composting or natural organic reduction, which that has been in the news a lot in our area. I don't know if it has been in Arizona as well, but that's something that just passed this year. And, I definitely took a couple solid years of advocating and having someone who sponsored the bill. So if it was anything like that, it was probably took some commitment and some really hard conversations. And, it was funny to see some of the representatives in the legislature making jokes about death because it's something that is a little uncomfortable. So, but it passed. So I'm really grateful for all the people who have in the past advocated for this. And it does make a difference, not just for you, but it'll make a difference for the people who come after you.
We had invited someone to come and speak about human composting earlier this year, and it was a great conversation. And that's when we learned too that it had passed in Colorado as an option for folks. And it seems as though people are very responsive to that. They're open to both of these possibilities. Folks want to know your personal story a little bit more. They want to know a little bit more about you and how you personally got involved. I mean, we're not asking about your childhood experiences. We just want to know a little bit more about what brought you to this, even though it had been on the books as legal, and then you became aware of it. What was that process for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I won't go into too much detail about early on, but I will a little bit because I think it's important, right? Like I was exposed to loss early and often in my life. And so that kind of put me in the kind of mindset of being more comfortable around death and around people who are grieving, and even being more comfortable with my own grief. And so that kind of colored who I was as a person early on. But from the professional side, I completely stumbled into this. I didn't, it wasn't necessarily something that I thought, no, I'll tell you, no one thought that knew me growing up that I would end up being someone who worked in the funeral space. That's just not something that they would have thought. So I had the opportunity, thanks to a boss and a mentor of mine, to join a corporate marketing team at Service Corporation International. They own, a couple thousand funeral homes across the US and Canada. So I was asked to join her team and was just immediately curious about the space and, how can you be as someone who comes from a marketing background, it's really intriguing to have to market something that no one wants to talk about and no one wants to deal with. So I was all just really drawn to that challenge and really drawn to that space. And when I joined, I got to see behind the curtain of the death industry and understand what it was like. So I was really fortunate to be able to see a bunch of different operations from really large spaces in large cities to, small Main Street funeral homes. And what I came away with was kind of a sick feeling in my stomach. I learned that with burial and cemeteries, of course, we all know about embalming. We'll replace kind of our fluids with chemicals to preserve the body. And then once it's time for burial, you'll be inside of a concrete vault. And then inside of that concrete vault, you're inside of a casket. And the whole reason for that concrete vault is to keep the ground flat at cemeteries and make it easier for them to maintain and, keep it more beautiful. So something about that just felt really wrong to me. The fact that you'd be entombed in this concrete and all just to preserve some body that you're not using anymore and, using all these materials and chemicals. And so that kind of set me on this journey to start advocating for how is there a way that we can be more connected to nature in our deaths? And that's what I would want for myself. And I, ended up having a really good conversation with my mom about what she would want as well. And after talking through some options, she said, well, I think I would want to be a tree. And then I said, well, we can do a green burial for you, where they don't use a casket or a vault, you just go into the earth. But she said, no, I don't want all those worms. I want to be cremated. And so that was kind of my aha moment of realizing okay, the vast majority of people do want to be cremated now, and they also want to be connected to nature. So how do we find a way to do both of those things? And that led me to water cremation.
Thank you for sharing all of that. And you have a friend behind you.
I do have a friend.
If someone has pre-arrangements for cremation, would that insurance policy be transferable, or could it be transferable to you all?
Depending on the policy, likely is. We also do have pre-arrangements available through insurance, and ours are transferable as well. So, it would be just a conversation with the insurance company and the provider that you had signed up with, and to find out if it could transfer. But in most circumstances, it can.
Great, thanks. Somebody wants to know why that liquid can't be used on edible plants.
Yeah, it's a really good question. So there's not any safety reasons why it can't be used. And there's also not technically any legal reasons it can't be used. However, we really just thought that knowing that we were going into a space that's already a little bit uncomfortable for people, it was in the best interest of our kind of values to use it on non-edible items, because there is kind of that dignity and that level of really people's comfort level of not wanting to eat something that would have been associated with a loved one at some point. So that's a choice that we've made. And again, with human composting or natural organic reduction, there is a specific guideline that it can't be used on edible crops. So kind of to just stay in the spirit of that law, we're going to continue not to use it on edible items.
That makes a lot of sense. Is embalming an issue for water cremation process?
It's not. It's still okay for someone to be embalmed prior to water cremation. It's rare. Most of the folks who choose this don't want embalming. However, it does not preclude you from doing it. It's, the studies that I've been made aware of are that the chemical process that happens during alkaline hydrolysis will really neutralize a lot of the chemicals that are in the embalming fluid.
It's good to know. If no one wants to receive the ashes that remain, what do you all do with them?
Yeah, there's in the state of Colorado, at least, there's a law that gives families up to 3 years to claim the remains of their loved one. And if after 3 years, no one has claimed them, then we have the permission to essentially put them into a communal space or a scattering garden, somewhere that's designated for cremated remains, and get rid of them in a manner that's not recoverable. So thankfully, we haven't had that happen yet. All of our families have come and picked up their loved ones' ashes, but there's certainly guidelines and laws for those situations, and here it's 3 years.
Okay. Have you had an capacity issue? I mean, is the demand greater than what you're able to provide?
Yeah, not yet. Although we're certainly growing pretty quickly. So, with 18 hours, we can do one a day, and then we would need to expand. So we haven't hit that capacity of, doing one every single day in the month yet. However, I can see that we're on a trajectory to need to expand at some point in not too distant future. And
if someone did want to utilize your service from another state, is there a fee for that on your part? I understand that it could be from the mortuary that's local, say it's here in Tucson, but is there a receiving fee on your end?
We would just charge our standard transportation fee to get you from the airport to us. So that's already included in our packages. At this time, our standard fee is $250 that you would pay even if you were here locally. So there wouldn't necessarily be an additional cost that an in-state family wouldn't pay, but there would be that fee of getting you to us from wherever you're coming from.
And one person just wanted to make sure, and I just want to reassure the folks, but the question is, are the bodies processed individually?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. Are there other things that have come to mind during this discussion that you feel like, oh yeah, I should have said this, or I know that people have asked questions in Colorado when you've been in conversations about this that we haven't brought up?
Good question. I think that we've covered most of it. Again, I just want to reiterate, if you want to do, there's a bunch of new trends around things that you can do with the ashes or cremated remains, like making jewelry, turning them into diamonds, and you can pretty much do any of those things with these remains as well. So that seems to just be a level of comfort for people and a level of familiarity, so that it's not, introducing something that's entirely new. We really do look at it as a subset of cremation and just a different way to get to a similar end result.
Oh, there is one more question that came up.
Cool.
How does one actually get these machines?
Yeah, there's a couple of manufacturers who create these systems and sell them to funeral homes. So if you're interested in checking those out, though our specific system came from a company called BioResponse Solutions. They're based out of Indiana. And then there's another company called Cremation, and they manufacture similar systems just with slightly different technology. So those are kind of the manufacturers. You can go to their website and research those. And I believe there's more coming onto the market as well that maybe just aren't as established yet. Those are the two that I'm most familiar with.
And someone wanted to thank you. They went onto your website and saw that there was a discount for veterans. So they wanted to express gratitude that you are recognizing those who served our country.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I have had many veterans that are close to me and appreciate the service.
Well, thank you so much for this conversation. It helped us think through this as an option, but then just gives us another way to talk about death and dying and final arrangements and what we may want, what's important to us, what our values are, and how we can enact those values even in the decisions we make with what happens to our bodies after we're gone. So thanks so much, Emily, for everything that you presented. I'm going to turn this back over to Alan to close things out.
Well, Emily, thank you very much. It was a great presentation. We all learned a lot, and I'm sure we have a nice talking conversation that we can hopefully use on our relatives and other people that might not want to talk about interesting things about death, because I think this is very interesting. We thank you for sharing tonight with us, the audience. We hope you will join us for future events in this series. The next one will be November 18th, and it is entitled Finding Pathways Through Grief During the Holidays. And the presenter will be Carol Miller, who's a licensed clinical social worker and has done work in the Tucson area in hospice. We'd also like to say you can register for that now. If you go to our website, you can sign up and we'll send you a notice that you've signed up, and we'll send you a notice before the next presentation so you remember to tune in. If you like our presentations, please do support our work, as David mentioned. If you have suggestions for other topics, please let us know. And as I mentioned, Megan will drop the link in the chat section. You can find that. And I'd like to say we're wishing you health and happiness and a wonderful night. Thank you for your attention.